Welcome to Vivid Verses. If our words resonate with you, please subscribe, tap the like, and share your thoughts and your feelings in the comments. Now let's begin. A relationship is, at its core, a merger of two operating systems. If the integration cost exceeds the output value, you have to liquidate the asset. Here is the full breakdown. The initial variable was introduced 10 days before Christmas. We were in the kitchen. I was going over the utility split for the month on the island counter. Gas had spiked due to the cold front, and I was checking the insulation efficiency. Lainey was leaning against the granite, watching me. The timing was calculated. She waited until I had closed my laptop, capped my pen, and placed my phone face down. She waited until I had no distractions, so the impact would be maximized. She told me her mother wanted a family-only Christmas this year. I didn't react immediately. I looked at her. We've been together 2 years. Last year, I spent 6 hours helping her father frame a shed extension in freezing rain because his contractor flaked. I designed the load-bearing structure for the roof myself. 6 months ago, I co-signed a lease on her car because her credit utilization was too high and her debt-to-income ratio was upside down. I am integrated into the infrastructure of her life. My capital, my labor, and my time are embedded in her family's ecosystem. Family only, she said. She was watching my eyes, looking for the dilation, the twitch, the sign of distress. I ran the scenario. There were 2 possibilities. 1, her mother actually said that. This implies I am not considered family despite the time and capital I've invested. It means my status is provisional, revocable at the whim of her mother's mood. 2, Lainey was saying it to manufacture a crisis. If it was the mother, Lainey should have fought it. A partner integrates their significant other. They draw a hard line. If she didn't fight it, she was complicit. She was accepting the exclusion. If it was Lainey manufacturing a crisis, she was looking for a specific reaction. She wanted me to argue. She wanted me to ask why I wasn't good enough, or to plead my case. She wanted the validation of me, fighting for a seat at a table I had already earned. It's a leverage play. You create a scarcity of affection or inclusion to spike the value of the asset. She wanted to see me destabilized, so she could feel like the stabilizer. I don't negotiate for things I've already paid for. I don't beg for access to a room I helped build. So I didn't ask why. I didn't complain about the 2 years of holiday integration or the car or the shed. I didn't reference the sunk costs. I adjusted my schedule. Understood, I said. I'll make other plans for the weekend. I saw the micro-expression on her face. It was a twitch in the brow. Surprise, followed immediately by irritation. She hadn't prepped for immediate acceptance. She had a script ready for a fight. She had probable counter-arguments loaded. It's just my mom. Don't be difficult. Why don't you care about my family? I didn't read the cue. I sidestepped the trap completely. She stayed in the kitchen while I went to the living room. I could hear her moving things around loudly, placing a mug down on the counter with unnecessary force, opening and closing the fridge. The heavy sigh. She was escalating the ambient noise to provoke the conversation I refused to start. She was trying to generate friction to spark the conflict. I sat down and opened the travel app on my phone. I had 4 days of PTO saved up, plus the weekend. 6 days total. I've been looking at a cabin up near the pass for months. High elevation, wood stove, 0 cell service within a 5-mile radius, unless you hike the ridge. It was the off-season midweek. The rate was 40% below peak. I analyzed the location. It was isolated. No Wi-Fi. Well water. Heating was entirely dependent on a cast-iron stove. It required work to inhabit. That was appealing. I needed a task-based environment to flush the cortisol from my system. I booked it. Non-refundable. I went to the bedroom to pack. I didn't throw things. I laid out the gear on the bed in a grid. Thermal base layers, wool socks, the heavy canvas pants I use for site visits. I packed the reading material, 3 books on structural engineering and 1 on Stoic philosophy I'd been meaning to reread. I packed a bottle of rye whiskey and a cooler with 4 ribeyes, a dozen eggs, and a block of butter. I packed efficiently. 1 duffel, 1 cooler. Lainey stood in the doorway while I folded a wool sweater. She was leaning against the frame, arms crossed, blocking part of the exit. It was a territorial stance. "You're packing," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "I'm leaving Friday morning," I told her, not looking up from the bag. "Since you'll be with your parents until Tuesday, it makes sense to utilize the downtime." "Where are you going?" "Up north. A cabin." "Alone?" "Yes." She tightened her grip on her own elbows. This was the second friction point. She expected me to say I'd stay home and wait for her, or perhaps visit my own parents, which would have been a hassle given the distance and the short notice. She wanted me in a holding pattern. By choosing a solo option that sounded objectively enjoyable, I was signaling that her absence wasn't a punishment. It was an opportunity. "So you're just going to disappear for Christmas?" she asked. Her voice went up an octave. "I'm not disappearing. I'm vacating the apartment so you can focus on your family without worrying about hosting me. It solves your logistical problem." It was a logical defense. She couldn't attack it without admitting she wanted me to be miserable. If she said, "I don't want you to have fun," she reveals the game. She walked away. I heard the bedroom door slam down the hall. Friday morning, the dynamic shifted. Usually, when we separate for a few days, there's a ritual, a long goodbye, a discussion of check-in times, a transfer of affection. This time, I drank my coffee standing up in the kitchen. I washed the mug, dried it, and put it away. I checked the thermostat and lowered it to 62 degrees. I picked up the cooler. She was in the hallway. She looked tired. She had likely stayed awake waiting for me to break the silence, to come into the bedroom and apologize for her decision to exclude me. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt, looking vulnerable. Another tactic. "Have a good time with your mother," I said. I didn't kiss her. I didn't offer a hug. I simply nodded, picked up my keys, and walked out the door. I checked the lock behind me. The drive took 4 hours. The first hour was urban sprawl. Stop and go. I used the time to mentally audit the relationship. I looked at the last 6 months. The arguments over trivialities, where to eat, how to fold towels, her dislike of my work hours. I realized that 80% of our communication was me managing her emotional state. I was essentially acting as a regulator for her anxieties. As the elevation climbed, the traffic thinned. The landscape shifted from concrete to pine. I turned off the radio. I cracked the window. The air got colder, sharper. I could feel the tension leaving my shoulders. It wasn't emotional pain. It was the cessation of operational friction. Being with Lainey had become a job of constant maintenance. It was like running a machine with a misalignment in the drive shaft. It worked, but the vibration was shaking the bolts loose. Driving alone, the only variables were the road conditions and the fuel gauge. The truck handled the switchbacks efficiently. I focused on the apex of the turns. It was quiet. The cabin was exactly as advertised. Rough-hewn timber, a single main room, a cast-iron stove in the center. The temperature inside was 40 degrees when I arrived. It smelled of cold ash and pine resin. I spent the first hour establishing habitability. This is the part one like. The problem is immediate and the solution is physical. I went out to the woodpile. The axe was dull, so I spent 10 minutes sharpening it with the stone I brought. I chopped kindling, then split 3 larger logs. I built the fire. I watched the draft catch. I adjusted the flue. Once the fire was established, I unpacked the supplies. I put the whiskey on the table and the steaks in the small propane fridge. I checked my phone. 1 bar of service. There were 3 texts from Lainey. 10:30 a.m. Drive safe. 11:45 a.m. My mom asked why you aren't coming. I didn't know what to say. 12:30 p.m. This feels weird. I analyzed the sequence. The first was a probe, a low-effort ping to see if the line was open. The second was a lie designed to induce guilt. Her mother knew exactly why I wasn't coming because Lainey had told her. If she hadn't, if it was a misunderstanding, the mother would have called me or invited me herself. This was Lainey trying to triangulate me against her mother to make me feel excluded while simultaneously absolving herself of the blame. She was painting herself as the victim of a situation she created. The third was the truth. It felt weird to her because the control mechanism was broken. Usually, I would be texting back, reassuring her, asking how the drive was. My silence was a variable she couldn't account for. I didn't reply. I turned the phone off and put it in the glove box of my truck. For the next 3 days, my routine was absolute. I woke up with the sun. The cabin would be cold again, around 50 degrees. I would rebuild the fire. I cooked breakfast in the cast iron skillet. Eggs, bacon, coffee. I ate slowly. I didn't look at screen. I looked at the grain of the wood table. I hiked the ridgeline. The snow was deep in places, crusted over. I had to kick steps. My lungs burned. It was hard work. It felt good. The physical exertion demanded total focus. You can't worry about your girlfriend's passive-aggressive comments when you are navigating a traverse on an icy slope. I reached the peak around noon on the second day. The wind was howling. I looked out over the valley. It was vast, white, and indifferent. It didn't care if I was invited to dinner. It didn't care about my relationship status. I realized then that I didn't miss her. That was the critical data point. I didn't wonder what she was doing. I didn't feel a void. I felt relief. I realized how much mental RAM was constantly occupied by running the Lainey simulation, predicting her reactions, buffering her stress, managing her expectations. With that program terminated, the system ran at peak efficiency. I could think clearly. I could read a book and retain the information without being interrupted by a heavy sigh from the other side of the room. The silence wasn't lonely, it was spacious. On the evening of the third day, I hiked up to the ridge to check the weather report for the drive back. I needed to know if the pass would be open. I turned my phone on. The device vibrated for a solid 2 minutes. It was like a frantic heartbeat. 17 text messages. 5 missed calls. The progression of the texts followed a predictable distress curve. Friday, 6 p.m. Are you there? Friday, 9 p.m. I'm just sitting here watching movies. Wish you were here. The lure. She paints a picture of availability. Saturday, 8 a.m. Good morning. Did you make it? Saturday, 2 p.m. Okay, seriously, are you ignoring me? The accusation. Shifting from concern to anger. Saturday, 6 p.m. If you're mad, just tell me. Giving me the silent treatment is childish. The reframing. She's now trying to label my behavior as the problem. She created the distance, but I am the one being childish for accepting it. Sunday, 10 a.m. I miss you. Please text me. The capitulation. The anger didn't work, so she reverts to neediness. Sunday, 4 p.m. I'm worried. I'm going to call the ranger station if I don't hear from you. The threat disguised as concern. She is willing to involve authorities and create a scene to force an interaction. I looked at the timestamps. She was spiraling. She was at a family gathering, supposedly the thing she wanted, the family time she claimed was so important. But she wasn't present there. She was spending her time staring at a screen, waiting for a packet of data from me. She was unable to enjoy the victory she had orchestrated because the loser wasn't playing his part. I sent one text. Service is spotty. I'm fine. Hiking. Talk Tuesday. I turned the phone off. I didn't apologize for the silence. I didn't validate her worry. I provided the necessary information, status, alive, activity, hiking, and establish the boundary for the next communication. I hiked back down to the cabin. The sun was setting, casting long purple shadows on the snow. I grilled the last steak over the wood coals. I poured a glass of rye. I sat by the fire and watched the logs turn to embers. I slept better that night than I had in 2 years. I woke up once, heard the wind, rolled over, and went right back to sleep. No anxiety. No checking the phone. I drove back Tuesday morning. The past was clear. I arrived at the apartment around 1 p.m. Lainey's car was in the spot. She had come back early. That was a deviation from the plan. She was supposed to stay until evening. I walked in. The apartment was warm. Too warm. The TV was on, but muted. She was sitting on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, wearing the same sweatshirt she had been wearing when I left. She looked small. When I walked in, she didn't yell. She looked at me with a mixture of relief and fear. The power dynamic had completely inverted. When I left, she held the cards, the exclusive family event, the rejection. Now, she realized those cards were worthless because I wasn't playing the game. "You're back," she said. "Traffic was light," I said. I dropped my duffel by the door. I walked past her to the kitchen. "You barely texted me." I poured a glass of water. "I told you I was going to cabin. The point was to disconnect. I thought you were punishing me." I turned around. I leaned against the counter, the same spot where she had disinvited me 5 days prior. "Lainey, look at the situation," I said. My voice was level. "You told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas. I accepted that. I found something else to do. I enjoyed myself. There was no punishment. I was just living my life." She stood up. "But we're a couple. You acted like you didn't care." I acted like a rational adult who was given a schedule constraint and worked around it. "I wanted you to care," she said. Her voice cracked. Tears began to form. "I wanted you to be upset that you weren't with me." There it was. The admission. I looked at her, and I saw the future. If I stayed, this would be the loop. Test, reaction, validation, repeat. She needed my distress to feel secure. My stability was a threat to her because it meant I didn't need her to survive. She wanted a codependent, not a partner. I realized the cost of doing business with her was too high. The ROI was negative. The emotional overhead required to keep the relationship solvent was bankrupting my peace of mind. "That's the problem," I said. "What?" "You made a decision to exclude me, not because of logistics, not because your mother actually demanded it, but to extract an emotional reaction. You wanted me to beg. When I didn't, you panicked." "I just wanted to know I mattered," she said, wiping her eyes. "You matter when we're building a life," I told her. "You don't matter when you're playing games." I had a great weekend, Lainey. I woke up, I did what I wanted, and I didn't have to navigate a minefield to get through breakfast. I realized something up there. She went still. She knew what was coming. "I'm happier on my own." It wasn't a metaphor. It was a factual statement derived from the data of the last 4 days. "You don't mean that," she said. She took a step toward me. "You're just still mad about the dinner." "I'm not mad. I'm clear. This isn't working. The maintenance required to keep this relationship functional is exhausting. I'm done." She stared at me. She waited for the but. She waited for the negotiation. "I'm ending it," I said. "You can't just break up with me because I went to my mom's for Christmas. I'm not breaking up with you because you went to your mom's. I'm breaking up with you because you try to manipulate me into feeling worthless to boost your own ego. And when that failed, you fell apart. I need a partner, Lainey, not a project." The rest was just logistics. I didn't yell. I didn't let the conversation loop into circular arguments about who did what 3 months ago. She tried to drag up the past. She tried to bring up the time she bought me a watch, the time we went to Cabo. I kept it focused on the immediate actions required. I told her I would stay at a hotel for 2 nights to give her time to figure out her living situation, since the lease was in my name. I offered to help her move her furniture. I offered to pay the break fee if she wanted to leave early. She tried to cry. She tried to get angry. She threw a throw pillow at the wall. She tried to seduce me, switching instantly from rage to softness, touching my arm. I treated each attempt like a variable in an equation I had already solved. I didn't engage with the emotion. I engaged with the physical reality. I understand you're upset, I said, removing her hand from my arm. But we need to sort out the key exchange. I packed a fresh bag, a week's worth of clothes this time. Laptop, chargers. I walked out to the truck. I checked into the hotel. It was a business suite. Bland, beige, clean. I ordered room service, a club sandwich, and a coffee. I opened my laptop and started planning the next week. I updated my calendar. I removed the recurring date night event from Friday evenings. It's been 3 weeks. The apartment is mine again. She moved out the following weekend. I hired movers to handle it, so I didn't have to be there. I had the locks changed the same day. It's quiet. The air feels lighter. I wake up, I go to work, I come home. The mood in the room is exactly what I decide it should be. There is no ambient tension. There is no guessing game. She texted me yesterday. I miss us. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I looked at the text. I analyzed the data. If I engage, I reopen the negotiation. I invite the chaos back in. I validated that the behavior is forgivable. I remember the cabin. I remembered the sound of the wind on the ridge. I remembered the feeling of being completely self-sufficient. I deleted the thread. I blocked the number. Problem solved. Detailed post-action analysis. Let's break down why this happened, so we don't repeat the error. The fundamental flaw in the relationship was a mismatch in communication protocols. I communicate via direct information transfer. She communicated via subtext and emotional leverage. Take the family-only invite. In a healthy system, if her mother actually requested that, the partner says, "Hey, my mom is being unreasonable and wants just family. I told her that's not cool, so I'm not going either, or we're doing our own thing." That is a united front. It's a secure border. Lainey didn't do that. She presented the exclusion as a test. The trap was binary. I fight for her. She feels validated or powerful. I lose dignity. I accept it. She feels rejected or insecure. She escalates. There was no winning move within the game she set up. The only winning move was to leave the table. When I booked the cabin, I wasn't trying to teach her a lesson. I was mitigating damage. I was removing myself from a hostile environment. The text bombing at the cabin was the extinction burst. In behavioral psychology, when you stop reinforcing a behavior, the subject will ramp up the behavior drastically before giving up. She was throwing everything at the wall: guilt, anger, seduction, threats. My silence was the only appropriate response. Any response other than the one I gave, informational only, would have been fuel. If I argued, I was engaged. If I apologized, I was submissive. If I comforted her, I was rewarding the tantrum. The confrontation at the apartment confirmed the hypothesis. She admitted the manipulation. "I wanted you to care." She admitted that her emotional stability was dependent on my emotional instability. That is a parasitic dynamic. Since the termination of the relationship, my efficiency has increased. My sleep quality has improved. My bank account is stabilizing without the random retail therapy hits she used to incur. I went back to the cabin last weekend. I bought it. The owner was selling. I put down a deposit. I'm going to renovate the insulation, maybe install a solar array, so I can have power without the noise. It's a good asset. It appreciates in value. And it's quiet. Socially, there has been some fallout. Mutual friends have reached out. They've heard her version. Lainey says you abandoned her at Christmas. Lainey says you're cold. I don't correct them. I don't send paragraphs of text explaining the nuance of the situation. I say, it didn't work out. I wish her the best. I don't need to win the PR war. I just need to maintain my perimeter. Some of the guys, the ones who are married to women like Lainey, they look at me differently now. We were out for beers on Thursday. Mike, whose wife calls him every 20 minutes when he's out, asked me what happened. She wanted to play games, I said. I stopped playing. Mike nodded. He looked at his phone, then put it face down on the table. He didn't say anything, but I saw the look. It was envy. He's still in the simulation. I'm out. The logistics of the breakup were simpler than I expected. The lease was the biggest liability. Since I make 3 times what she does, I was paying the rent. She was contributing to groceries and utilities. She didn't have savings. When I told her she had to move, she tried to use that leverage. I have nowhere to go. You have parents, I said. The ones you wanted to see so badly. They live 2 hours away. My job is here. That is a logistical problem, I said. I offer to pay for a hotel for 2 days. I offer to pay the lease break if you want to find a new place immediately. I'm being generous. You're kicking me out. I am reclaiming my residence. The relationship is void. She ended up staying on a friend's couch. I believe it was Sarah, the one who always told her she could do better. I imagine the reality of hosting Lainey is different than the theory of supporting her. I spent the Saturday after she left doing a deep clean. I scrubbed the baseboards. I reorganized the pantry. I threw out the half-empty bottles of specialized shampoo she left in the shower. I found a note she left on the counter. It was 3 pages handwritten. I didn't read it. I know what was in it. Justifications. Accusations. Please. I dropped it in the recycling bin. Reading it would have introduced new variables. It would have planted doubts. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe she really is sorry. Data from the past predicts the future. She is sorry she lost the resource, not that she mishandled it. If I took her back, the behavior would resume within 6 weeks, once the honeymoon phase of the reconciliation faded. The respect would be permanently gone because she would know that my no isn't final. A no that could be negotiated into a yes is just a maybe. My no is absolute. I'm currently focusing on work. We have a big contract coming up in Q1, a logistics hub in Nevada. I'm lead on the site planning. It requires travel. Before, that was an argument. You're always gone. You love your job more than me. Now it's just a schedule. I booked the flight. I packed the bag. I go. I met a woman at the coffee shop yesterday. She was reading a book on supply chain economics. We talked for 5 minutes about just-in-time delivery systems. She was articulate, focused. She didn't lean in or twirl her hair. She checked her watch, said she had a meeting, and left. I didn't ask for her number. I'm not ready to onboard a new system yet. I need to run a full diagnostic on my own operating procedures first. Ensure there are no residual bugs. But it was refreshing. A conversation that was just an exchange of information. No subtext. No trap. I'm keeping the truck packed. The cabin needs work. I'm going up next weekend to seal the windows. I'm looking forward to the drive. The silence is addiction. Once you get used to the lack of static, you realize how loud the world actually is. That's the report. That's how it went down. If you ever find yourself in that kitchen, watching her wait for you to react, watching her set the trap, just walk away. Don't engage. Book the ticket. Pack the bag. The view from the ridge is worth it. Thank you for listening. That brings today's story to a close. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. See you next time.